also authored a book titled Skills for Life that was published in February 2019 for free distribution at Jackson adopted schools all over India. On the personal front, she is a travel enthusiast, love road trips, enjoy photography, and thoroughly enjoy travel writing. She has her own travel and lifestyle blog, Travel Diaries, bornvoyage.wordpress.com. She has also been a guest contributor for many lifestyle portals. When she is not traveling or working, she listens to music and play tennis. Welcome, Saurya. We are very happy to have you here. We will like to know from you. You belong to a beautiful place in Goa, where Harsha is at present. And now you have completed your journey to Gurgaon. How has been this journey? And what all you have gone through this?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Upadhyay, for having me here today on this platform. And yes, I hail from the beautiful state of Goa, a very, very small emerald on the west coast of India. And that is where I was born and brought up. And I also completed my master's there in human resources management. And I've also worked there for a couple of years. I've been a hotelier. Of course, now I'm in the energy sector, which is quite different. And basically, I think the kind of, my husband's also a hotelier, you know, he's with the Oberoi Hotels. And we kept moving from place to place. He was on a transferable job. So actually, I've seen the entire country, you can say north, south, east, west. The only place I haven't seen in India are the Seven Sisters. So I haven't seen the Seven Sisters at all. But I have actually lived in, I think, about close to 8 states now. Before I moved to Gurgaon, which was way back in 2014. Even after that, we kept on moving. And I have been with Jackson now, it's been close to 9 years with the company. And it's been a wonderful journey, a very satisfying journey. I've moved different roles. And I think one of the most fulfilling roles and journeys of my life would be the one that I head with corporate social responsibility. That gives me a great amount of satisfaction and happiness.
Great. In the last 7 years, you have traveled through many departments and business units in Jackson Group. And currently you lead the CSR and corporate communication vertical for the group. Tell us something about the CSR activities of the group. Does CSR make business sense, or is it just a philanthropy?
So that's an interesting question, Dr. Upadhyay. For me, CSR is it's passion, it's love for what I do. But I mean, that's not why organizations exist, right? I mean, passion is one part of it. I think CSR makes a lot of business sense. It definitely makes business sense in many different ways. You know, I have moved roles. I would like to say that I started off my career with hotels in way back in 2002, where I was heading human resources. And I worked for both international as well as domestic brands, you know, Intercontinental, Taj, Kenilworth, Leela, to name a few, before I actually moved to Jackson. And even when I joined Jackson, you know, I joined, Jackson does have a hospitality vertical. So that's where I joined the company. And, you know, we have a beautiful hotel, which is a platinum rated green hotel, which meets all environmental norms in a very small place in Maharashtra. It's a small village called Fulton in Maharashtra. So I think when we set up the hotel way back in 2014, you know, we did a lot of community development there in Fulton, whether it was to do with environment sustainability or even adding to quality education in a small village, you know. So we worked with the communities there. And I think that's, you know, that time in life which brought about a whole change in the way I think. So as we were setting up the hotel, and you know, for every business, the community is really important. The success actually of a business depends upon its stakeholders, community being one of the largest stakeholders. And we started working with the local community because, you know, when you set up an industry in such, you know, far off and remote India, you need people. You need people to work for you. And it's very difficult to get people who speak good English and who are well educated and who are skilled. So our role started, I think my role per se in actual CSR started way back then. And we looked at developing the community and employing the community, making them employable. So we set up schools, we did a lot of educational programs, we helped local farmers by buying basically produce from them. So there were many ways in which we initiated community development programs, and that is where the entire CSR gamut started, at least in my life. And then it kind of grew on me, you know. And post hospitality, I mean, the kind of work we did, of course, our parent company, Jackson Group, where now I play a leadership and a corporate role. I moved into CSR for the entire company. And post that, of course, a year ago, I moved into corporate communications. But I would say the journey of CSR has been very eventful. As a company, our focus areas are quality education and environment sustainability. And over the last couple of years, we have been working in these areas very, very, I would say, in a focused manner.
What difference COVID has made to your CSR activities?
a lot of people have been asking me this question since last year. And I say it has made a huge difference. It has made a huge difference. I mean, we never believed that we could do CSR on a virtual platform, but honestly, it has almost come down to that now. Because especially during the times of lockdown, where you cannot step out and where our roles are, actually working out there in the community. Today, we are confined to our homes and we are trying to reach out to communities being confined in our homes, which is not an easy task. So we are also, using the digital platform to the best of our advantage. We're making the most of it, but it has been very difficult because the personal touch that we used to have with communities, that has been reduced to quite an extent. And I think, we are trying to minimize the impact of COVID on our stakeholders as far as we can. So, whenever we get these windows that the lockdowns are open, through our NGO partners and other volunteers, we try to reach out to the communities that at least we support and ensure that, we are still being able to help them during these tough times. We have done a lot. In fact, we do not work in healthcare, but from last year onwards, as I earlier said, we majorly are fortes into education and into environment. But last year onwards, being the need of the hour, being the need of this country, we took up healthcare as a part of one of our SDGs. And since then, we've been trying to support the medical fraternity. We've been trying to support hospitals in different ways, be it oxygen, be it masks, be it ICU equipment. So we've done our bit on that part. And I think last year, everybody would be aware, of the kind of problems that the labor, in our country went through, where they were stranded for months. Literally months. And we've actually managed to support them through our partners by supplying food supplies and all basic sanitation and other necessities. So we've kind of been doing our bit during times of COVID in the healthcare segment as well.
Okay. When I started my career, I had a Maruti 800 and I almost traveled half of India in Maruti 800 and it never gave me trouble. I saw you have also been traveling a lot. And what do you look at a place when you go for travel? What are these type of qualities which you want in that place? And why do you travel basically?
The word travel itself makes me so happy. And I haven't really traveled in the last 1.5 years. I am really desperate for a holiday, but health comes first, safety comes first. So I guess we have to be very patient on that front. Having said that, Dr. Upadhyay, I would have traveled about, I think, 24 countries. And I've traveled almost whole of India. Like I said, the only part I haven't done is the Seven Sisters. But, whenever I travel, I actually look at the experiences. So for me, it may not be luxury travel all the time. Some of the travel might be purely experiential, where we can experience, the food, the local food of certain communities, or, the way people live. Like I very well remember that on my trip to Scotland, I think way back in 2016, we chose to live in a castle, and a castle not for a royal experience per se, but for the experience of how the dungeons of this particular castle was converted into, a very nice restaurant, which gave a very different experience. So for me, that bit of experience is something that I remember. And be it Europe or be it US, of course, the big cities are really important and they fascinate one because the kind of infrastructure development that these first world or these superpower countries have. But apart from that, like I still remember the trip that we made to Italy a couple of years ago, and I chose to live in one of the vineyards that actually set up the first winery. And it was the first winery that was set up in that region, and it was for the first time that I actually got to see a bottle of wine made by this particular winery that was made in 1904. So we are talking about something which is like over 100 years old.
Yes.
And I think those are the kind of experiences that I choose, when I travel. So I make it a point to have experiences of the culture of place, even interactions with local people. I think that excites me a lot and makes me look forward to building friendships and relationships. So that's the way I look at it.
I have been in rural development for very long. And what we tell the students is, please go and stay in villages for some time to learn the real experience. Then only you know how they live, what you do for them and all. Otherwise, it becomes what you call, earlier used to call that Indian planning is almost done in Delhi, in AC compartments and all. So to young generation, after COVID and otherwise also, what is your advice? How should they tackle their life when it comes to travel, meeting people, going to remote places? Like I belong to Himachal Pradesh.
Mm-hmm.
So we really have a problem now because the travel was stopped. But now today, if you go, you can't find a hotel in Himachal.
Mm-hmm.
It's so overcrowded at this point of time. So what is your advice to the younger generation, especially who want to work in CSR, rural development, social work, how they should travel and how they should interact with people?
Okay. So I am really heartened to hear that you're from Himachal. In fact, I've lived in Himachal in Shimla for 2 years, and I absolutely loved it. Yes,
Sure.
yes. I think, yes, sustainable tourism is one thing that everybody is talking about. And for tourism to become sustainable, it depends a lot upon external factors, actually. We can't really make tourism sustainable just like that. Like, for instance, during the times of a pandemic, talking about sustainable tourism is a difficult topic. It's not, it's easier said than done kind of things. That's where you need a lot of government intervention, support, incentives, soft loans, all of that has to come in to be able to support hoteliers and the travel and tourism industry today overall. It is getting very difficult for them. But yes, there is revenge travel that is happening at this juncture because people have been cooked up in their homes over the last 2 months and now they're all out and all geared to travel. But what I would like to say to everybody, not only just young travelers, I think one thing that COVID has taught us is hygiene, the importance and relevance of hygiene. And I think, today, what we couldn't do through our educational programs, formally also in schools, I think today it has become, we have learned it automatically, or we were forced to learn it. We were forced to learn better methods of hygiene and sanitation. And when we travel, we should not forget that we are still in the midst of a pandemic. Okay. We might have taken one or rather both vaccinations. That is good. We should vaccinate as many as possible. But I think what is important is not to forget COVID protocol. That is something that we need to continue to bear in our minds. Also, young travelers, I think today's generation travels far more than probably my generation or the earlier generations. And I noticed that, a lot of people like to do drivable distances. It's very convenient. You get into your car and you drive. People find that safer today considering the current scenario. So I think it's very important that apart from supporting just big hotels, in India also, the concept of homestays has grown by leaps and bounds. And homestays also offer a lot of niche experiences to travelers. And at the same time, apart from offering experiences, I think it's also helping families to earn an income. Especially, there is a lot of rural tourism in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Himachal as well. I mean, you come from such a beautiful state, and you would probably know of a lot of people who own homes, far off in the mountains, which are becoming popular, tourist stays and staycations as of now. So definitely I would urge youngsters to explore India. India is a beautiful country. Help people sustain themselves and this industry by even utilizing homestays. But at the same time, I would definitely urge homeowners, to ensure that they are maintaining the right hygiene protocol, because that is extremely crucial. And the second important aspect today, I think, is that network is very important. So the younger generation or even the working population would like to travel to an area where they are completely in mobile network. So that is one of the crucial factors today for survival of any tourism industry, for that matter.
Okay.
And that will continue to be remain an important factor. So I guess this is what I would like to talk about as far as the tourism industry is concerned.
Great. You published a self-help book named Paving the Highway to Success from Home that speaks about how to be successful in this new normal while working remotely. Please tell us more about it. What is it and what you are trying to convey to us in that book?
Okay. So I would say that you have to read it to know it better. but, but in short, I think I'm a big believer of productivity. To me, it doesn't matter, where you work from. For me, results matter at the end of it.
Okay.
And if you can, deliver results in the comfort of your home or remotely, then why not? Why not give, opportunities to people to work with you, deliver productivity, no matter where they are sitting from, even if that means another state or another city. It should not make a difference. So, Paving the Highway to Success from Home talks about how to achieve goals, okay, while you continue to work remotely. So, it talks about various aspects, such as, how important planning is, discipline is, credibility in life is, relationship management in life is, time management. So it talks about a couple of parameters which are important for gaining success while you continue to work remotely. So that's what the book talks about, and I think it's great motivation, especially for companies that want to attract talent from not only across cities and states but even globally. Because today we know it is possible. I'm sure all of us here on the screen today are sitting in different parts of the country, and we are still achieving what we've set out to achieve. So if this is achievable sitting on a platform like this, why not give opportunities? And we can have hundreds of people, whether they are physically challenged, whether they are women, we can bring in so much of diversity into the workforce and give opportunities for people to earn livelihoods, rather than only expect people to come to office. So in a nutshell, that's what my book talks about. But I think flexibility is the key, and that's something my book focuses on. It also talks about that every job cannot be performed, from the comfort of your house. There are certain jobs that are customer interactive, that require you to be there on the production line, and those jobs are, unavoidable. You have to come down to the shop floor every day. So work for home is not meant for all job roles, but yes, if a company strategizes and plans itself well enough, if it identifies roles that can be performed remotely and can be performed from the offices, I think both employees as well as the organization will benefit leaps and bounds.
Thank you. See, ISCSR is a R&D and training institution for responsible business leadership. What courses should we run for corporates and upcoming talents to develop responsible business leadership?
So, yeah. So, there is I would say, when we talk about responsible business practices, the term refers to the practice of conducting business with consideration for ethical, environmental, as well as community goals. In addition to that, it's all about being a good employer. At the same time, profitability for any organization is very important. When we talk about how we can do all of this and what are the courses that can be offered, I think today we could force as I mean, a lot of organizations and organizations like yours can focus a lot on renewable energy. I think climate action or any sustainable education practices, waste management, sustainable cities management, or even diversity management. All of these can be considered as part of sustainable development. That's the way, at least, I look at it. There is huge potential.
Sure, thank you. I would request Johnny, Keshav, Ram, if you have any questions. Johnny?
Yeah.
Can you switch on your video?
Yeah, sure.
Please, we want to see you also.
It's not about the question. So I was just thinking while in this pandemic situation, wherein people they need the CSR the more, but at the same time there might, because CSR is linked to the profit, right? 2% of the profit. Okay. Now there might be companies which might be going from profit to losses, right? And that might be companies which might be say earning 100 crore profit. They might be earning now say 20 crores or 50 crores. So one thing is there any impact study done on that? Like for example, because of some companies may go from profit to loss, so they might not be eligible for subsequent maybe 2-3 years. And second thing is second is that companies might be telling that okay, first comes the profit. So are there any companies that are demanding, chalo is saal 2% nahi, 1% kar do ya waive off kar do? Are there any thoughts about that?
So as far as advocacy is concerned and non-profitability is concerned, I am sure there must be some advocacy that's happening with the government. Although I have not really seen any published reports on it. But frankly speaking, yes, a lot of organizations that were into profit today are into a loss. So basically, they cannot afford to carry on CSR. And there are some organizations, especially in the IT sector, that you will see, and even the blue chip companies in India who've done phenomenally well, even in a bad year. So, so companies like this contribute not only 2%, but they go beyond mandate. And I'm not only talking about big companies, there are a lot of smaller organizations also that are doing work beyond or contributing beyond mandate. So I'm not very certain, whether companies have approached the government to reduce it from 2% to 1%. But all I can say is that if your company is focused on CSR, because CSR is a strategic function at the end of the day, it brings huge branding and goodwill to any organization. So if companies look at it from a very strategic point of view, or like Dr. Upadhyay said, does it make business sense? Yes, it makes business sense, a lot of business sense, even in times of a pandemic. So if I was spending last year 2% or 3% of my profits on CSR, would I be spending this year? I would say yes, because at this time, if I'm not contributing towards my country, I don't think I'm able to earn that kind of goodwill, in the markets that I operate. So all I can say is I can speak on behalf of Jackson, and I'm a proud Jacksonite to say that we have not cut down our spending at all on CSR. And I think even in the past, we have not just looked at 2%, we have gone beyond mandate. And I can very openly tell you that companies like Asian Paints and companies like Reliance, they are doing much more than mandate. So there are organizations that are contributing for a good cause, even during tough times.
One more question. Actually, in this pandemic, I have realized one thing. So when we talk about CSR or maybe donation, so people normally think about the poor people, education and all. Now I am from city which is in Mumbai, that is Ulhasnagar. Okay. Now there are small businesses. Okay. They are also affected. They are paying their salaries, they are paying their GSTs and all. But the only difference between poor and those businessmen are poor people can ask for the food, can ask for the money, but these small businessmen, they cannot ask. Second thing, what has happened, and while we are in the jobs also, while we are talking about gender power equality, and I have read many articles that women who have taken the break of say 5-6 years, they Tata have created this initiative, they can also join back, right? Now, in the CSR, for at least for 2-3 years, are we having any plans of people who have lost jobs, white collar jobs, because of this pandemic? Are we having any focus on those kind of people as well? Because these are the people, they cannot ask for the food, they cannot ask for the money, like unlike poor people, right? And CSR always the first thing thought goes to only poor people. What about these middle class who are affected and they cannot ask for anything, and they have never asked for that? Yeah.
Now, very frankly speaking, there is no relationship between CSR and employability. They are two different functions. Employability becomes a human resources function, and supporting livelihoods becomes a CSR function. So, as far as encouraging women to come back to work, that could be one example that you're talking about, or people who've lost their jobs, or like you said, business communities. Many of them have got bust because businesses have shut. So, practically speaking, this is not the role that CSR performs. So the CSR gamut is not covered under this. There is a section called 135 of the Companies Act, and there are certain specifications that are covered. If you're looking at CSR, an organization can perform only those number of sections which are included in the Act. Like, for instance, the latest development that has happened in CSR after the pandemic hit, was basically any kind of medical equipment, whether it is ICU equipment, whether it is oxygen cylinders, all of that came under the gamut of CSR, which was earlier not included in CSR. So there are certain amendments made to the law, and only those can be considered under CSR.
So can these be added at least for 2-3 years? I mean, no, it is a fixed for some years.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
So, like, suppose if we want to amend that for at least taking this pandemic into consideration, so do you request to Companies Act or maybe the law for this section of people to be added, or it is fixed by the Act or something like that?
Yeah, so the Act is fixed. The Act is amended only by the government. But if we are looking at, say, helping people to get employment, that can be done by organized. I would look at it beyond the CSR function. I would look at it as a moral and ethical responsibility of any organization. So if I have laid off people for whatever reason, when I say I don't mean literally I, but I'm just saying in the organizational context, if a company has laid off people, during a bad time, then it should make efforts to reinstate that people, when things get better. So I think that is a moral obligation of every organization.
Sure.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks.
Ram, can you switch on your video? Great. Please go ahead.
Bridge. Nice.
Hello. Hi, sir. It was amazing listening to you, your passion and the way you've been driving it. So I have two questions, I will ask you. The first question is about, even in this recent amendment of CSR, there is a recommendation from the government this side on the joint CSR, where, companies come together and pull in, coming together. So how you see that, companies not only as, as a single entity, what's your view on companies together and pooling CSR and then do it for a common cause? And that's the first question. The second question is about, as you see right now, all of the CSR money, predominantly the big companies, is diverted towards COVID-related, COVID-related funds, and many of the NGOs, which is focused on other areas apart from COVID, is badly affected, right? So, they're funding many of the small NGOs and other NGOs getting closed, and a lot more is getting affected. So, how do you see this trend? It's going to change? Is there going to be any trend, or is there any NGOs need to upskill, or how the CSR trend would be post-COVID? So those are the two questions that I have.
Okay, so I'll take your second question first, actually. Now, what happens? You're absolutely right in both the points that you made, and I couldn't agree more to your second point. In fact, a lot of NGOs that were in other areas literally have little or no work. And companies will, for instance, suppose as an NGO, my forte is, say, environment sustainability or waste management. A company wouldn't really hire me for healthcare. That is not going to happen. So what happens to such NGOs? They are struggling. There is no doubt about it. But when the economy rebounds and things go back to normal, and we are looking at a 1-year window, I am very, very certain that life will get back to normal. And these guys will be able to go back to work. I can tell you, I can talk to you, rather relate to an example with our company itself. So, like I said, we are into education, and a lot of the education that we do is basically in, in the informal sector, apart from the formal sector. So now, if you look at the informal sector, is education in informal sector is very important, but it is not a part of the regular curriculum, or regular school. Now, we took a call that we wanted to continue, okay, and we wanted to work because at the end of the day, we are running early learning centers for only the girl child. That is one of our own homegrown programs, and we didn't want it to stop. And we are looking at very small kids. We're looking at kids from the age of 2 to 6 years old, and we have NGOs that rely on us because they are the ones, they are our partners for actually the implementation bit. So we look at it two ways. One is that, what if we did not support the NGO? How would, because they also employ people, So I think it's our moral responsibility and obligation to continue working with them. Yes, there might have been certain changes in the terms and conditions of our contract, but it's not that we've done away.
What are you wearing? Flip-flops?
Should I wear shoes?
Yes. Go and get your shoes. Just hold it with yourself and don't take a lot of time.
Mute her speaker. Okay, yeah. So we've continued to support our NGO partners in education, but as a company, like I said, we've also moved to healthcare. So we've looked at other NGO partners as well. So these NGOs have suffered. And they're also, over the last 18 months, they're also trying their very best to move into different sectors. But I'm not very certain companies will join hands with them, because companies also want people who are experts, in healthcare. They don't want to, and healthcare is a very, very sensitive issue at the end of the day. It is not, like any other SDG that you pick up. It is a very, very sensitive issue. It involves lives and death. So you want to work with a company that is completely in sync with healthcare. So that's to answer your second question, if I've been able to clarify some points, I hope. And going back to your first question, I think whether pandemic or not, your first question is very relevant. If companies can partner with each other, if organizations can come together, you can meet much larger objectives. Now, whether CSR leaders want to do it or not want to do it, that is a big question mark. Because at the end of the day, I mean, on a very frank note, everybody wants to know who's going to get more of the branding, because branding is also associated with CSR at the end of the day. But if we put our egos aside, and if we, put our, if we don't consider branding to be the core, but the benefits of those programs to be the core, then I think partnerships make a lot of sense. It makes sense both financially for organizations, because the more you can pull in from different pockets, the larger amount of population you can actually service. And secondly is that you can reach a large number of beneficiaries, which you would have not been able to do alone. Also, sometimes relationship management becomes easier, because your partner organization might have a better relationship in that community, okay, whereas you might not have such a great relationship. And thus partnering or coming to mutual agreements, or even sometimes piggybacking on certain organizations can bring in huge benefits to both the communities as well as the organization.
Thank you, Ram.
Thank you, Shaya.
Last question from Johnny.
Yeah. Hi. So I have actually very basic question. So while we have companies that will fund for all CSR activities, and we have NGOs that will actually implement that. So now my question is, what is the role of young professionals like us, or maybe the professionals who are learning CSR, SDGs and all? What is the role of people like us in that? If you can elaborate on that, please. Thanks.
Johnny, are you talking about being an aspiring CSR? What you say? An aspiring individual, Are you looking at a career in CSR? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah. So before looking for the career, what would be our role? Say, for example, companies will fund that, and NGOs will basically implement the CSR activities. So if we are looking for a career, suppose if we do MBA in CS or if we do some certification SDGs or ESG, what would be our role in that? Because neither we fund nor we will implement. So what would be our role in that? If you can elaborate.
I actually am not getting your question. Are you asking me from an employee perspective or from an NGO perspective? Or an organizational perspective such as yours? I mean, what
Okay.
relevance is this question?
Okay, so say for example, there is a young professional who has an MBA in CSR. Okay, and company is ready to invest say 2 crores in some village. They will be doing some. There are some indicators in that, and they are appointing one NGO also, and NGO is it will do all the activities, CSR activities. Now, what will this guy who has an MBA in CSR? What would be his or her role in that?
So the person who is, I think what you're talking about is somebody who's aspiring to make a career in CSR. That's what you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. Okay. So now you can look at it from two perspectives. I don't know where the individual wants to fit in, whether he wants to fit into an NGO or he wants to fit into the organization. So it all depends upon that. So if you're looking at him, fitting into an organizational perspective, every organization has a CSR department today. At least those companies that are making 500 crores and above have CSR departments, and they execute certain projects. So there are roles available for youngsters, for freshers, as well as for experienced individuals, because there are different roles available. So you have roles that are available at the grassroots level, at the middle management level, at a higher management level. And then you have the second part of it is the NGOs. Now NGOs work very differently. I'm not very certain because every NGO has a different hierarchy. You have NGOs as large as like an SOS Village that have like branches in all over India and internationally. And then you have some NGOs that are very small bodies that operate in smaller cities. So the potential of employment with the smaller NGOs is always lesser, but with the larger companies is always larger. And there's immense potential both in the corporate sector as well as the NGO sector. If that's your question, I hope I'm being able to answer it correctly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you, sir. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Johnny. See, these some of the students who are here, they have just completed a course in Sustainable Development Goal Mapping and Measurement, where we have gone through sustainable development, sustainability, sustainable development goals, how you measure it, what it means in international context, in national context, like what Niti Aayog is doing, and the type of companies which are coming in to now map the sustainable development goals. So they have just completed this course. What is your message to these people? And what do you think is all this about social, the sustainable development goals? So your last message to them.
Okay. I would say make a career in CSR only if you're passionate about it. It is not a job. Let me tell you that. It is not a job. It's a passion. You have to have the heart for it. You can make a career. There's nothing wrong in making a career with it. But what I'm saying is that you have to have the heart for it. That is very crucial. It's a tough area to be in. It's not all about doing good, although it seems like that or it's reflected. But actually working in communities is a very tough job, because always you are not welcomed by communities. At times you have to face a lot of opposition from communities. You have to be very thorough with your paperwork, because the audits that happen are very, very stringent today, and companies want accountability. The government wants accountability. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I'm saying this. Right now, the employment rate or opportunities for this role is minimal. It will be minimal for this year as well. Okay, but don't get disheartened with that. Okay, every cloud has a silver lining. You only have to prepare yourself. Self-learn as far as possible. Undertake projects for free if you have to, because learning is something that is very crucial to this role. Even if you feel you're looking out for a job and it's not happening at this juncture, okay, it is the industry, so don't blame yourself for it. That's the situation that we are in currently. So use opportunities to train or to learn from others, or even to take up some online courses in this respective field, because next year I'm sure the market will open out, and when it does open out, there will be a lot of work to be done in communities. There will be a lot of work to be done for the environment per se. So, I would just wish you all the very best and tell you to continue learning as much as you can.
Swati, you wanted to ask a question? Can we have you?
Yes.
Yeah, just last question.
So, ma'am, I'm a student at SRCC. So, my question is directly related. Like when we talk about CSR, it is directly related to corporates. But as a student, what steps can we take inside our college so to support sustainability, and what should be the perspective of a student towards sustainability in college? Like, why it's all about corporate? I think sustainability is all about everyone, every individual. So, any steps for the student? Yeah.
So Swati, that's a brilliant question. And what I really like is that you're enthusiastic about looking at it from a student point of view, which is a wonderful thing. So please keep the good thoughts flowing. And it is who says it's only a corporate profile? Sustainability can be done at any level, beginning from our homes, our institutions. It can be practiced anywhere. So small little examples like how do you make your institution sustainable, and what does the sustainability actually mean? Sustainability is when you undertake a project or you take up an assignment, that it can have a very long lasting impact without you having to spend on it year after year, year after year, year after year. So it is basically a process, which becomes a very successful process. So you can go in as an institution, you can look at how you can, you can save water, you can look at clean energy, you can look at waste management. So there are so many initiatives that can be driven even as a student or within an institution or within a family or a home as well to drive sustainability. So it is not just a corporate function. I think it is a moral responsibility today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Surya. It was great to have you. We really enjoyed it, and we look forward to meeting you again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you everyone who's here on the panel. I've had, I think, a wonderful time today, and I wish you all the very best in your endeavors. Thank you so much.
Can everybody switch on their video for a last picture, please? Others? Yes, anybody else left? Keshav, samne dekho. Yes. And that's why I said, because you must smile now. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Thanks very much. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.